Now, England's World Cup dreams, they came to an end on Saturday night as they lost to France in the quarterfinals. So the big question now is, what is next for Gareth Southgate? So it's been reported this morning that the FA will consider foreign managers if Gareth Southgate decides to leave England. The FA would like the 52-year-old to stay for Euro 2024, which is in about 18 months' time. It's not too far away. Southgate said this about his future: "There are lots of things in my head that are really conflicted at the moment. I guess he's going to have some time to just discombobulate, have a little think about his future and what he wants to do, and then we'll find out where the future holds for England and that football team in particular." I'm pleased to say joining us now is the Times chief football writer, Mr. Henry Winter. Good morning.
Henry. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm good. I can't believe I covered all the big games out here and I didn't get invited to cover the talkSPORT versus ITV game. Because obviously,
if you want to hang about after the show, I'll give you a full match coverage of it.
Well, I mean, from what I've heard, my sources in the very divided dressing room, it has to be said. The first question was, why was Ali McCoist playing for ITV and not talkSPORT? Was it anything to do with the fact that you had Gary Neville and Roy Keane on your side, and you'd have had Sam Ellard?
That was a massive factor. The Keane-Ellard factor came into play an awful lot.
It was a long, thought-out process, I imagine.
15 seconds, Henry.
As much as that.
But we did have good fun.
And you scored, I assume.
Yes, thank you very much.
You got man of the match,
two goals.
Two touches, 2 goals.
He doesn't want to mention it, but you got man of the match.
And who chose man of the match? Ali McCoist.
No, that was Ian Wright's job, however. Now, embarrassingly, off my own goal-scoring exploits yesterday for ITV, I want to ask you about the future of the England manager. Now, most of the reports this morning are saying the FA are more than happy, more than willing to take in a foreign manager. A, would you be happy with that? And B, is the time right now for a new manager, or do you think Gareth staying would be the better option?
The decision is completely Gareth Southgate's. The FA is desperate for him to stay, partly because the debates will come on to about alternatives. They like him. They like the culture that he's engendered in the dressing room. The fact that he's rebuilt the relationship between the dressing room and the fans, which was broken after Iceland, Nice in 2016. So they like that. The fact that the players want him to stay. You talk to them on and off the record. They are all completely behind him. They enjoy reporting for duty. You know, you played Scotland. I'm sure the atmosphere there was fantastic, but it had become a little bit fractious, and there have been cliques with England. Southgate's done away with that, so I think the FA like that. I think the decision has to be made. We talked to him in the mix zone afterwards, and he was just completely raw with emotion. You know, third tournament, quite close. You know, but quarter-final against a depleted French team. But you can see there's some progress with the team, but the decision has to be his. He has to go back to his family, and this is when you're England manager. There's probably only one other person in the country who's under such scrutiny, and that's the Prime Minister. And it's brutal. I mean, he was talking about, when he came out and talked about vaccines, the abuse that he got on social media. He took himself off social media. The letters he got to his home. It's one thing having a go at him at the FA, but actually he was getting letters to his house. That's quite insidious. That sort of then breaches, your safe space. And that's why one of the reasons why he was so protective around Raheem Sterling when Raheem had to go back home. So I think all that we have to remember that there's an individual in this as well as a professional, and something I have to be aware about in my profession when I criticise it, when I think that particularly the second half of that final at Wembley, that was England's greatest chance, and they missed that. And I came out of that, the Euro final, thinking if Southgate had acted quicker. Obviously the whole thing was overtaken by the focus on the storming of Wembley, and even more significantly the horrendous racist abuse of the 3 black penalty takers. So understandably, the Southgate's failure to react in the second half was sort of slightly down the pecking order, but that clearly became a huge issue because that was such a missed opportunity. There are signs of development, but what I hate about this, and what I wrote at length about in the Times yesterday, which seems to have caused a bit of a stir, was the fact that there's an acceptance the FA come out with a bland statement and we've all done very well. This is not a school sports day. This is the national sport, the most important team in the country. What probably, for most people that are going to vote on something, probably the most important passion in the country. It's the reason why we all come into work, why you guys are so popular, because there are people out there listening now who care so much about the national sport, the national team, and they want to see this great generation, this new crop of kids coming, doing well. Standing in the mix zone and watching a fantastic young player like Bukayo Saka, who's taken abuse, who's stood up, he's taken penalties for Arsenal since what happened at Wembley, who I thought was fantastic. Didn't understand why he came off. I don't think he was injured. Yeah, just seeing him walking through the mix zone, and he had his hood up and his head down, and your heart goes out for him. He said, we've got good players. And it's just tweaking, whether it's that mindset, whether that's ruthlessness. And I've been through 15 of these tournaments now, and the anger doesn't subside. It's something about the killer instinct. I think it's a systemic problem with the Football Association, maybe something broader in English football, maybe something broader in English society. That's way above my head. But it's something that they've got to nail. And whether Southgate's a nearly man, a nearly manager, whether you need a finisher as well as a starter, I don't know. But that is a process that the FA have got to address.
That's what I was going to ask, actually, because I just wondered whether or not you feel that if you change the manager, can you change all that with one manager? And is there any risk? Because listen, if he decides to walk away, they've obviously said, look, it's in your hands, you make that decision. Is there a risk bringing in a new manager, and especially a foreign manager, that they won't get the kind of culture that Southgate has created here?
Let's take a very cold look at this year. If this was a sort of a business, and it's not, and it's an emotional passion, but if it was a business and you looked at the results of this year and you go, England have been relegated from the Nations League, they've been booed off at Molineux by some of their hardcore support, let alone the tourists. They suffered their worst home result since 1928. And they then went out at the quarter-final stage with a full-strength team, barring probably Reece James at right back, and Kyle Walker's had a terrific tournament, against a French team who are missing probably half of their best players. If you did an audit of this season, of this year, you wouldn't say that's necessarily a great year. And then everyone's going around patting each other on the back, and the FA putting out statements saying, wonderful, let's go off to the carol service. It's more important than that. So, look, forgive